I dress up as Shaggy for kids' parties. Scooby-Doo is really starting to freak me out. About a month ago I got a job dressing up as Shaggy for kids' parties. To be honest, it's not my dream job, but I have some acting experience from high school. I'm good with little kids and the pay is pretty decent. So I got a job working for a company whose name I won't disclose, but it's a pretty well-established company who organizes clients to hire actors to dress up as Disney or Marvel characters for kids' parties. At my interview with the company director for my city, the dude looked me up and down and told me I was perfect for the role of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. I'm tall and lanky, have scruffy brown hair and am a 21-year-old white guy, so I guess I pretty much fit the requirements. I was happy with the role as I had watched Scooby-Doo religiously as a kid, all the way through from the 70s episodes that my dad had on tape to the newer movies and spin-offs. Plus, there was the added bonus that I didn't have to wear a boiling hot fursuit, like a lot of the party actors did. A friend of mine who had referred me to the company used to have to dress up as one of the chipmunks, and my god was that costume heavy and awful. I guess that my costume couldn't require much more than a baggy green V-neck and brown pants. I felt sorry for the poor sucker who was going to have to play Scooby-Doo. I betted that costume would be hot and itchy as hell. The party company messaged me a couple of weeks into January to tell me that they had got me a party on Saturday the 18th, a 6th birthday party. Sweet, I needed the money. They also gave me the number of the guy playing Scooby, I guess so that we would have met and could iron out our routine before the party. So I messaged the guy, Jared, and he seemed pretty decent, a couple of years younger than me maybe? But he seemed alright, and even offered to pick me up and take me to the party as he lived locally, and it would save us taking 2 cars on the Saturday morning of that first party. I practiced my Shaggy voice in the mirror. There was a script for a sketch that me and Scooby would act out at the beginning of the party, which I learned. There were also some prompts for responses to typical questions so that we could interact with the kids in character. With my costume on, I actually looked a heck of a lot like a live-action Shaggy. Jared's car pulled up front a little early. It was a good thing I was ready because it was a good 15 minutes before we agreed, but I knew it was Jared because he was in the driver's seat wearing a Scooby-Doo fursuit, complete with SD on the collar and hood fully up. Yep. He was in the driver's seat with the full costume on. I headed over to the car grinning, thinking that he had the hood part of the suit on as a joke, because surely this dude was not going to drive around with his full face covered by some furry costume. He rolled the window down and gestured with one paw for me to get in the car. I got in the passenger seat, still expecting this dude to pull down the hood and laugh, but he didn't. I looked at him more closely when I sat down. I couldn't see a single part of him that was not covered by a brown furry costume. Hey, you must be Jared? I asked him. Hello Raggy, he replied in a very good impression of Scooby-Doo's voice. That's a really good man. I laughed. He just stared at me through the nets that were Scooby's eyes. My smile faltered as I tried to make out Jared's eyes through the suit, but I couldn't. He continued to sit there and stare at me, one hand on the wheel, lifeless, unblinking eyes staring into mine. I let another 20 seconds pass before asking, are we going then? Scooby's head snapped forwards and in a fluid motion, and without saying anything, he hit the gas and started driving. We drove for 10 minutes in silence. I kept furtively watching Jared out of the corner of my eye. How the hell was this guy able to see through that thick net over his eyes? I hope to God we didn't pass a police car, because although there's probably not a law against driving in a Scooby-Doo costume, this guy was driving like a maniac. He was swerving around like crazy, so much that in our 10-minute journey to the kids' party, 3 cars beeped at him. I felt like suggesting that he take off the hood of the costume because it was clearly obstructing his vision, but I sat tight, realizing that we were about to pull onto the right street. Do you know where the house is? I asked him as we pulled into the street where I knew the kids' house was. Over here Raggy, said Jared in another insanely accurate impression of Scooby, gesturing one paw towards the house. I forced a laugh. Seriously Jared, have you practiced the script? He didn't reply as he parked up outside the house where the party was. Jared? I repeated with a little more irritation. I really don't think we have to be in character until we get inside. He did not respond. I'm serious man, do we know what we're doing or not? I was not surprised when he didn't reply. Seriously though, this guy had seemed totally normal online. He had an older sister who I knew from college and she was totally ordinary. I told myself that maybe he was just weirdly committed to the role and trying to get in character. But to tell you the truth, something about those lifeless mesh eyes gave me the creeps. I gratefully got out of the car, so did Scooby. I was half expecting him to jump out of the driver's seat on all fours and start bouncing along the grass, but thankfully he didn't. He walked with a slow stiff plod. Maybe the costume was heavy and it was difficult to walk normally. We rang the doorbell, standing awkwardly side by side as we waited for the kid's mom to open the door. Hi guys, don't you two look great? Why don't you come into the kitchen while we set up? She took us through to the kitchen and pulled us up chairs at the table, offering us lemonade. Jared still did not take off his costume hood. The kid's mom was really friendly and nice. I vaguely recognized her as a friend of my mom's. She told us all about her son, who was called Lucas, and his Scooby-Doo obsession, while she set up a buffet of party food for the kids. She asked us a few polite questions too, and I talked about where I went to college and she asked about my mom. Jared got asked a few questions too, but only replied with a theatrical nod or shake of his head that made the ears of the costume flap. I could tell that the child's mother was kind of taken aback when she asked Jared where he went to school, and he stared blankly at her through those dark mesh eyes and didn't reply. Before the Shaggy and Scooby bit, a magician was performing. We peeped into the living room to see 10 odd faces staring up at a young woman in a purple sequined witch's hat waving her hands over a box as she prepared for her final trick. Who's ready to see the birthday boy disappear? The magician asked the eager children and was met with a barrage of excited applause. When a grinning Lucas reappeared from the box, his mom introduced Shaggy and Scooby, and 10 little heads craned around, eyes wide and animated as they took in Jared's furry brown costume. The routine went to plan. We played games like musical statues and passed the parcel, and managed to stay in character. Thankfully Jared stuck to the script, and the kids were absorbed by his unnervingly good impersonation of Scooby-Doo. I was begrudgingly impressed that anyone could be this good at acting as a cartoon dog. This guy had everything down, from the voice and expression to the bounding gait. He was undeniably a great actor. I was just beginning to think that I had judged him too harshly for his weird behavior and that maybe he was some kind of method actor when he went off script. We were doing our final bit, asking Lucas about his birthday presents, etc. when Jared interrupted me, bounding over to the starry, magenta box that was still left out from the magician. Hey kids, who wants to disappear? Asked Scooby. Zoink Scoob, I think everybody's already seen that trick, and we're just about to have some cake. Scooby wasn't listening. A little girl had got up from the front row, eager to be a part of the disappearing trick, and Jared was leading her by the wrist towards the large box. To my relief, at that moment, Lucas's mother appeared in the doorway. Hi everyone. Did we have fun with Shaggy and Scooby? The cakes are ready in the kitchen. Scooby let go of the little girl the second that Lucas's mom entered the room, and all the children scrambled to the kitchen to get some cake. Jared and I stayed in the living room, not talking, taking a seat awkwardly on either end of the couch. We heard the muffled sound of the children singing happy birthday from the kitchen, and the scraping of chairs as the children tucked into their lunch. Lucas's mom brought us a plate of cookies and sandwiches, and a soda each, along with the money we had earned. Jared, still in costume, snatched the plate of cookies out of her hand. Scooby snacks. Yummy, he said, still in character. Lucas's mother seemed a little deterred but laughed and sat in the armchair to have some lunch herself. I was curious to see if Jared would finally take off his costume to eat, especially now that the party was over. However, he simply unzipped a small opening at the mouth and wrists of the costume. I continued a stream of conversation with the child's mother, while Jared sat silently devouring his food, at a speed reminiscent of the real Scooby-Doo, when I noticed something strange. Jared's hands and wrists were visible for the first time, and his forearms were covered in thick dark hair. I did a double take. Scooby had finished eating and was hastily zipping up the wrists and mouth again. I didn't know much about Jared, but I knew for a fact that he had sandy hair, which would definitely not match up to this kind of body hair. I thanked Lucas's mom, but turned down the lift home with Jared. Wasn't sure I'd make it home safely in a car driven by the dude again. Not to mention, I didn't particularly want to be seen by anybody I might know being driven around by someone in a fursuit. I watched as Jared bounded into his car, still in full costume, and sped away. I got a lift with some friends and we hit some bars. I actually entertained them with the story of my encounter with real-life Scooby. That's actually creepy as said my friend Emma as I got to the part of the story about the magician's stuff and Jared had gone off script. How? It's just a high schooler in a costume, babe, laughed Emma's boyfriend Zach. No, seriously, she insisted. I mean, who knows who or what was under that fursuit? Any weirdo could throw on a Scooby costume and viola free entry to a kid's house. You need to stop watching so much true crime, Em said. Zach, no, I see your point. I laughed between sips of my beer. Looking at those mesh eyes was creeping me out. There was no shot I was letting that dude drive me home. It was just odd, you know, how he never left character. I hope I'm not put down to work with that dude again the next morning. My mom called me that night to tell me that she had spoken to Lucas's mother and that she was singing my praises about our performance. Lucas and the other children had a great time. It's a good thing they could find another Scooby actor to step in at such short notice, isn't it? My mom said. What? Oh, didn't you know? The party company contacted Lucas's mom to tell her that Jared Littman had resigned last minute, but that they had found a replacement. Did the new Scooby actor not tell you he was standing in? The conversation continued, but I wasn't really listening. So the Scooby-Doo actor hadn't corrected me when I called him Jared all day? Later that evening, I tried to get some work done, but couldn't concentrate, feeling strangely unsettled by something that I couldn't place. I decided to call it a day, switching on the TV, ready to watch a movie and maybe grab something to eat before sleeping. Just as I was switching over to Netflix, something caught my attention on the district news channel. The article had already begun, but I watched the story twice, horror dawning as the newsreader announced that the savagely dismembered body of a local teenager, 18-year-old Jared Littman, has been found in the shallows of a lake just outside of our city. The young man's body was found early this morning by local police. Authorities have ruled this a homicide and will proceed with the investigation accordingly. The victim's mobile phone, black Honda Civic and other personal possessions known to have been on his person at the time of death are missing and yet to be found. Due to the brutal nature of the young man's death, the public are warned to take precautions when walking alone and potentially avoid secluded areas, as the horrifying nature of the crime is so graphic and disturbing that local police are unable to divulge some details to the public as of now. The reporter continued, but I wasn't listening. I switched off the TV and sat motionless for a long time. So if the timeline was right, Jared had been killed the morning before the Scooby-Doo party. But that surely couldn't be right. He'd texted me when he was outside my house. Hell, he had picked me up in that black Honda. So who the was Scooby-Doo and why did he have Jared's things? My blood ran cold when I remembered that Scooby had collected me from my house and therefore knew where I lived. I was suddenly very glad I hadn't accepted a lift home with Scooby that night. I've quit my job at the party company, of course, and spent the last few hours on a video call with my friends discussing everything that's happened and commiserating about the fate of poor Jared, who would soon be finishing high school. I have also been in contact with the police, telling them everything I could about the Scooby actor, his bizarre behavior and how he had been driving Jared's car. I couldn't stop thinking about Jared or shake the unsettling feeling that whoever was wearing that f***ing costume played some part in what happened. It was past 2 in the morning when I finally shut off FaceTime and my laptop, making sure to have double-checked the locks on my front and back doors before heading to my bedroom. I had reached the top of the stairs before realizing that I'd locked my dog, Bruce, my big and friendly black lab, outside in the yard. I heard him scratching frantically to come inside. I'm coming, bud, I yelled down the stairs before tiredly turning around and plodding back down to let him in, glancing into the dark kitchen to check his bowl was full. I used my phone flashlight to navigate the hallway, quickening my steps as the scratching got louder. Bruce, I'm coming, mate, I said as I approached the back door. Suppressing a yawn, my phone screen lit up at that moment and I paused to read the message and I stopped in my tracks, blood running cold. Zoinks, I had so much fun at the party. Don't leave your old buddy waiting out here in the cold. Open the door, Raggy.